Central School. It's Mrs. Hewing here with another edition of Central School Book Talks. Today I have 3 picture books I want to tell you about. Now, all 3 of these picture books are actually on next year's Blue STEM list. I'm trying to get my Blue STEM reading out of the way early this summer. But these are 3 great books that I really can't wait to tell you about. Starting with Ada's Violin, the story of the recycled orchestra of Paraguay, written by Susan Hood and illustrated by Sally Wern Comport. Now, in this story, we're going to meet Ada. She's a young girl who lives in Paraguay. Now, the country where she's from is actually a poor country in South America, and what you're going to find out is Ada's town is built pretty much on a trash dump. It's the town and the village where everyone from the surrounding areas brings garbage trucks in and they just dump trash after trash. The people in Ada's village and Ada's family, their main job is to go to the dump, sort through, and find things that might be valuable. Now, Ada's grandmother has loved music. Her entire family talks about music, and every night they gather around listening to the one possession that they really own, and that's a radio. And they love to talk about music. Ada's grandmother would love more than anything for Ada and her sister to learn to play music. When a man comes to town and offers music lessons, Grandma signs them up in an instant. The problem is when they all get there for music lessons, there's only a handful of instruments and a lot of kids who really want to learn how to play. They work together to figure out how they're going to solve this problem, and they start digging through the trash to find things they can use to create and build their own musical instrument. Ada really wants to learn to play the violin, and she ends up making a violin out of trash that people have thrown away. This is a wonderful story. It's even a true story about the recycled orchestra of Paraguay that ended up traveling the world and putting on concerts. They still do. One of the really cool facts that I learned in the back of the book is this recycled orchestra of Paraguay actually opened for the rock group Metallica in the past. So it's a wonderful story about a girl's love for music and how she did whatever she could to play. Next up, I have the book Game Changer, John McLendon and the Secret Game, written by John Coy, illustrated by Randy DeBurke. Now, when I picked up this book, I knew nothing about it other than the fact that it was about basketball. But as I started reading, I was trying to figure out what was going on because they talked about this blacked out car where you couldn't see through the windows carrying these basketball players to a game. And when they got to the gym they were going to, they had to throw coats over their heads so no one could see the players. Well, it come to find out that it's Game Changer because this was an illegal basketball game set up by John McLendon where an all-white basketball team played against an all-black basketball team. This was during the time of segregation in the U.S., and they were not allowed to take the court together or against each other. But these boys were going to play this illegal game. When the game started out, both sides were playing, but they weren't really playing hard. They were afraid to touch each other. They were afraid to foul. They didn't know what would happen if one player bumped into another. As the game wore on, they started getting into it, and they started truly playing basketball. And it's an amazing way to see how the game of basketball changed. This happened before Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier for Major League Baseball. This was one of the very first non-segregated sporting events in the U.S. And it's really interesting how after the game, the boys just got together and talked about basketball. It's what basketball players do. It was a fabulous story where I really learned a lot. Last book I want to talk to you today is called Whoosh, Lonnie Johnson's Super Soaking Stream of Inventions, written by Chris Barton and illustrated by Don Tate. Now, this is a story about the inventor of the Super Soaker. I know we all know what Super Soakers are. They're so much fun to play with during the summer. But This is about Lonnie Johnson and how he wanted to become an engineer, but he was an African American and wasn't always very good at science and chemistry and things, and no one thought he would succeed. But he went out and did what he could do to become successful. There were several times in his life where he lost his jobs. He took everything he had to try to show off this invention and spent all of his money, and it took a long time for him to be successful, but finally people realized the wonders of the Super Soaker and Lonnie Johnson. So those are my 3 books for you today. Remember, keep reading this summer. Make sure you are ready for school in the fall. Have a great day, guys.